Today, it's impossible to watch television without seeing a commercial for depression. These commercials are banned in every country but two, the United States being one of them. Coincidentally, business for these drug companies is booming. According to the CDC, antidepressants are the #1 prescribed medication in the U.S. So the question we ask is, are that many people really depressed? And if so, why? And what can we do about it? Today we talk depression, from its symptoms, effects, and many causes to how to get past it. And today's guest believes the answers are not just found at the bottom of a pill bottle. She's a top-selling author and physician whose new book, Just Because You're Depressed Doesn't Mean You Have Depression, is promised to rattle some cages and hopefully set people free in the process. Please welcome the founder of the Block Center in Dallas, Dr. Marianne Block. All right. Are you ready to rattle some cages?
I am. Let's do it.
All right. Well, you know, depression, that is huge. I mean, I hate those commercials, by the way. Can I tell you, I hate those commercials, the little ball bouncing and things, you know, that you see. And they come on with this real serene, soft, melodic voice. Do you feel down? Are you having a bad day? Are things falling apart? Maybe Zoloft is for you. And then they tell the side effects real quick. Your heart may stop beating. You may fall down and die and have seizures. But, you know, still, ask your doctor if you can take it. I mean, this is, out of control.
It is. I really think it is.
So now tell me, what inspired you to write the book? Just because you're depressed doesn't mean you have depression, because you're saying that we, even Christians, can be depressed.
Absolutely. You know,
yes. How many of us have been depressed? But does that mean you have depression? No.
No. I mean, you lose a loved one. You can feel depressed for many different reasons. But depression is a psychiatric disorder, and they're listed as symptoms. And so, because they're just symptoms, they're really not diseases. And that makes depression a symptom. So we can, just because we feel depressed doesn't mean we have a psychiatric disorder. And, you know, if you feel depressed for 2 weeks, supposedly you have depression. Yeah. Well, you know, when I lost my mom, believe me, I felt depressed for a lot longer than 2 weeks, but I didn't have depression.
Right. So, are there people who have the true defined psychiatric depression in the world today?
I don't think we really know the answer to that, because the way the whole system is, everybody who feels depressed automatically gets called, says they have depression. And unfortunately, too often, and I find most of the time, doctors don't spend the time to find the real cause of why that person's depressed.
Now, let's just talk a little bit about your credentials. You are a medical doctor.
I am a physician.
You went to medical school and all of that. And so how can your position be so far removed from what we think of normal medical doctors as being?
Well, it does have to do with my background and the fact that I went to medical school at 39 after doctors made my daughter ill using psychiatric drugs for her bladder infections. And so I went to school to protect my family from that sort of thing. And when something like that's happened, and a lot of doctors around the country do practice the way I do, and almost all have had some kind of personal experience that opened their eyes to the way medicine is generally practiced.
Now, of course, God had a much bigger purpose in mind than you just taking care of your family. And you didn't maybe even see that at that point, but you could see it was much bigger than all of that.
Yes,
because
absolutely.
He wanted you to be a blessing to many, many, many people.
I feel very, very fortunate to be able to do that.
Okay, well, let's talk about depression. I mean, I have interviewed Dr. Meredith and Dr. Meyer, who are both Christian psychiatrists, and they have both told me that there are times where certain drugs can be used for a small season of time that have been a tremendous help and blessing to people, and then they would eventually wean them off and, you know, and they would get strong and not need the medicine. What is your philosophy on that?
I'm sure there are examples of that happening, but my question still is, why was that person feeling that way to begin with? I think one of the ones that concerns me the most is the term postpartum depression. And it's used for women who feel depressed after childbirth.
Right.
Well, every single doctor in the universe agrees that the cause is a hormone imbalance.
Right.
Why are they not calling it postpartum hormone imbalance and fixing the hormones?
Yes.
Why are they calling it postpartum depression and throwing antidepressants at these women?
Wow. Because when you have a baby, your hormones,
They just go crazy.
they do. They go crazy. And so you are sure that there is many times something below the symptom that's physiological and that can be helped to solve the depression. Is that right?
Absolutely. It's the hormones. I see that all the time. I just so frequently. And you ask why I would write a book like this, and I treat so many children who've been labeled ADHD and helping find the cause of that. And in that process, almost every single mother of those children had been put on antidepressants.
Really?
And they weren't necessarily depressed. I mean, they would tell me, no, I was stressed, or one said I had back pain and they gave me the antidepressant. So it just was happening over and over and over. And I thought, boy, somebody needs to educate the public about these medications as well as the true causes of the symptom of depression.
So can you give us an example of someone who was diagnosed with depression that was on antidepressants that you treated?
Oh my gosh, yes.
There's
so many. And once again, rarely has any of those people been given a physical exam or had any lab work done. And I find the #1 cause of feeling depressed is a low thyroid, a thyroid that's not functioning properly. And some doctors will do a thyroid test, and others won't look at it at all. And it's very, very important to look at the thyroid. And so I usually, when someone comes in and they've been on these medications, again, you cannot stop these medications abruptly.
Right.
They are associated with suicide risk, both going on and coming off.
Right, so you hear us clearly on that. When you hear us talking about this, that doesn't mean that you're to go and throw your medication down the toilet,
Right.
because that would be dangerous. If you've been taking something, you would have to wean off it slowly under the care of your doctor.
Of your doctor, absolutely.
Right.
So yes, I can just think of a woman that came in. She had actually, they diagnosed her as postpartum depression because she felt kind of anxious and stressed after having 2 babies in 3 years, and put her on Prozac, which is an antidepressant. And she ended up having a lot of different side effects.
Isn't that pretty strong, Prozac?
Well, it's was one of the first of that type of antidepressant, so it's commonly used. But the woman had gone to probably 5 or 6 different specialists because she had these dry eyes, and she had this hip pain, and she had all these different symptoms to all these different organ systems in her body. And when she saw each specialist, she told them, I'm on Prozac. And some of them were prescribing all kinds of drugs. One wanted to go in and do a biopsy and do all these kinds of things with her. And so she brought her child to me, and she decided to come and see me about her symptoms. And she started talking about all these symptoms she had. And she says, and I'm on Prozac. So I just got out the medical book that looks at the side effects of drugs. And I just opened it up and looked up Prozac. And lo and behold, every single symptom that woman had was listed under Prozac. And she was furious because she had told all these other doctors, and none had looked to see that that drug could have caused those symptoms.
So was she able to come off?
She was able to come off the medication. She had a severe thyroid problem that had gone undiagnosed and untreated. And I mean, she even said, you know, within a few days of off the medication and on the thyroid medication, she felt like her old self again.
Wow.
And no longer had to take a nap in the afternoon. And
so how fulfilling was that to help her?
It's wonderful. It's just, you go home smiling every day.
That's great.